Chuck Brownman's short crime fiction has been published in several anthologies and websites, including The Eyes of Texas, the world's best, shortest stories of all time anthology, and multiple volumes of the annual Death Edge Tales anthology. He is a past winner of the Arizona Mystery Writers Short Story Contest and was a finalist in the CriminalElement.com Short Fiction Contest. His latest stories appear in Volume 7 of Hoosier Noir and the Shotgun Honey website. Multiple seasons of Us, Mysteries to Die For, podcast and anthology, on Kings River Life, Mystery Rats Maze website, and on Punk Noir's website. Another story will appear later in 2025 in the Chop Shop Season 2 anthology. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. The rules for law and order create the boundaries for civil coexistence and, ideally, the backdrops for individuals, families, and companies to grow and thrive. Breaking these rules puts civil order at risk, and while murder is the big daddy of crimes, codified ordinances across municipal divisions, counties, states, and countries show the nearly endless ways there are to create mayhem. This season, we put our detective skills to the test. This is Season 8, Anything But Murder. And here we are at Episode 18, and Arson for Hire. Arson for Hire is our featured crime. This is A Slow Burn by Chuck Brownman. I knew you were going to do something goofy with our intro music.
Yeah, but you couldn't prove I would, so that won't hold up in court. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, so what are we going to use for our bass line today?
We're going to use a bansuri. So I'm going to admit, when it puts the name across my keyboard and it tells me what it is, sometimes then if the name's too long, it'll abbreviate it. And I don't know if it's abbreviated or if that's just what it actually is. So this one is BANSURI.
Oh, that's very soothing. It's like a balm, like a soothing balm for our arson case.
A balm?
Balm, B-A-L-M.
I know, but balm. A balm?
A soothing balm.
I've never thought of my music as balmy.
The arsonist smolders.
Oh,
that's the title of the chapter.
Oh, okay. I was about to be mad at you for some pun. Never mind, that's Chuck's fault. I should be mad at him.
The arsonist smolders.
All right, I'll shut up.
Detective Ron Larson decided to play it cool, which was ironic considering he was questioning an arsonist. A warehouse had burned to the ground 2 weeks ago, the night watchman barely escaping with his life, although he'd have scars, both physical and emotional, for years. It had taken a lot of manpower and overtime for the already stretched Banville PD. Thanks to a ton of hard work and the loose lips of a couple of snitches, they finally collared Torch Thompson. Thompson now was in interrogation room 2, and Larson was selecting his game plan. Calm, detached, and logical would be best, he thought. Thompson was known to the cops. He'd been brought in for questioning before, although Larson had never handled him. But Thompson would know the different interrogation techniques and wouldn't be intimidated by threats or anger. Larson tugged at his loosened tie and took a deep breath, glancing around the room to see if the other detectives were paying attention. None were. He entered the interrogation room. Thompson's dark eyes snapped up. appraising Larson, but his facial expression didn't change, and he said nothing, waiting for Larson to make the first move. Cool customer. Larson tossed the file on the metal table, introduced himself, and gave Thompson his Miranda rights again. He didn't want this guy walking on a technicality. You know why you're here? Thompson shrugged. Just a public-spirited citizen helping out the cops who can't seem to find their asses with both hands. His words were slow, deliberate. Larson snorted without humor, giving himself time to not rise to the accused man's bait. I'll tell you, smart guy. The Buckingham manufacturing factory was torched 2 weeks ago, and your fingerprints are all over this job. Not possible, Thompson said. I was somewhere else. You got an alibi? I'd love to hear it. I'm sure I'll come up with one when the time's right, he said. I give it to you now, you're likely to beat up the guy, scare him into changing his story. Thompson shook his head. No thanks. I'll keep it to myself for the moment. Okay, so cool and calm wasn't working. Time to turn up the heat. Listen, asshole, we're gonna nail you for this job and all the other ones you've skated on. You ain't walking out of here. Turn up the heat all you want, cop. It don't bother me none. I've been hassled my whole life. Question is, how long you want to sit here, sweating, before you admit you got nuttin'? 30 frustrating minutes later, Detective Larson walked out of the interrogation room empty-handed. Torch Thompson was proving to be a tougher nut to crack than Larson had anticipated. Bad luck in there? Ignoring the clicking of keyboards and the hum of conversations going on around him, Larson looked at the man who'd spoken, a tall man that seemed to dwarf Larson's own 6'1", with the long face and bushy eyebrows. You need to leave the squad room. We don't allow civilians in here, Larson called to a uniformed officer who'd been temporarily assigned to help him due to the high profile of the fire. Officer Schick, would you show this man out? The tall man nodded. Good policy. He pulled out a business card and thrust it toward Larson. Joey Ross, investigator for Ohio Provincial Insurance. We got the policy on the warehouse, and I'm here to see that the guilty party, or parties, are apprehended. And avoid paying off on the policy? If possible, he said. Officer Schick approached, ready to toss Ross out. She was an attractive blonde, mid-20s, just 3 years on the force after graduating from the academy. If you'll follow me, sir. Ross looked expectantly at Larson. Larson sighed and then said to Officer Schick, Thanks anyway, Connie. He can stay. Officer Schick said, Okay, detective. He handed him a file. This is part of the information you wanted for your interrogation. Larson nodded, reminded how little progress he'd made with Thompson. Ross grinned, then pulled some papers out of a file he was holding. These might help. Not knowing Ross's game and conscious of that Greek-bearing gift saying, Larson took the pages and scanned them. It was a compilation of analyses of past fires, how they had similar features, coupled with statements from members of Banville's ever-widening criminal class identifying Torch Thompson as the guy behind them. Larson whistled. Where did you get this stuff? Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies, Ross said, his face displaying no emotion. Just use the info to pry Thompson open. I'm especially interested in who hired him to burn that warehouse. You think it's an inside job? Larson asked. The thought occurred to me. Armed with Ross's information, Larson re-entered Interrogation Room 2, aware that he had more leverage now than he'd ever had before, and also mindful that he had an audience watching. Detective, Thompson said, smiling. Back for more of the same. Using the intel that Ross had gathered, Larson connected Thompson to other suspicious fires over the last couple of years. Seeing that he was burned, Thompson said, I want a deal. Depends on what you have to say about this latest fire, Larson said. The Buckingham warehouse. The arsonist's eyes skittered back and forth as he thought. He gave a frustrated sigh. Ain't got much to tell you about that one. Yeah, I was hired to scorch the place, but I don't know who hired me. How did they contact you? Pass instructions on? An encrypted email on a chat room where you don't ask questions, Thompson said. How much did they pay you? 25 large, paid through an encrypted cryptocurrency exchange. It seems kind of low for a guy with your experience, Larson said. Thompson shrugged. The pandemic from a few years ago is still keeping jobs few and far between. Times are rough, even for guys like me. Sit tight, Larson said. He exited the interrogation room to find his lieutenant standing beside the insurance investigator. The senior cop looked even worse than his usual irritable self, frowning as if he'd eaten a rotten piece of fruit. Ross, on the other hand, was sporting a wide, exaggerated, self-satisfied grin. Either one looked like trouble, but together, they added up to something awful about to happen. The lieutenant wasted no time dropping the bad news on Larson. You got a new temp partner, he said, jerking a thumb toward Ross. Lou, you can't mean it. Comes direct from upstairs, the lieutenant said. Make the best of it and close this case. Quick. The lieutenant walked away, leaving Larson and Ross alone. Ross shrugged again. Sorry about that. But my company really does have an interest in finding out who's behind this. If it is an inside job, Larson said, does that let the insurance company off the hook? Might. Depends who it is and why they did it. Larson waited for Ross to say more, but the man was doing his best impression of a clam. The silence grew between the two men. Surrounded by the hum of the squad room, Larson let the dead air expand, determined not to break it first. But all the while, he was thinking, great, I'm stuck with a partner I can't trust. This was gonna go well. Scalding the company executives. On the way to Buckingham Manufacturing, Larson and Ross exchanged information about the company. Like anyone who lived in Banville for any length of time, Larson knew the Buckingham family's history, or at least what they put out for public consumption. They were a local family who not only made good, they'd done better, building a small smelting operation into a national business now headquartered in Pittsburgh. But they kept the Buckingham plant operating, either as a historical artifact or as an ongoing debt to the town. Cynical or good business or good reputation, it all depended on who you talked to and whether they owed their economic survival to the Buckingham business. Larson and Ross entered the top floor of Buckingham Manufacturing's administrative building, located adjacent to the burnt-out shell that, until 2 weeks ago, had been the company's flagship plant. They were ushered into what appeared to be a makeshift conference room by a slender, differential young woman, late to mid-20s, with dark hair. Once they were inside, the woman scurried to a corner and sat down in front of a laptop and started clicking away. Cheap folding tables were scattered around the space, each one covered with files, notebooks, and papers, and a maze of laptops connecting to HDMI cables. Behind the mess stood 3 people. Larson recognized each of them from photos in the official police file. Frank Buckingham was the company's CEO. His daughter, Lydia, a blonde woman in her 30s, served as vice president. And Don Carter, the chief operating officer, was an outsider they'd brought in last year to help run the company's day-to-day activities. Larson and Ross waited, standing like statues as Buckingham and Carter were locked in an intense conversation, while Lydia stood by studying one of the notebooks. Buckingham called out, "Ashley, get me the production data from the Freeport plant." The young woman who'd escorted them in grabbed the folder and ran to hand it to Buckingham. He opened it, ran a finger down a page, and then tapped the paper. "You're right," he told Carter. "That's where the bottleneck is." Buckingham again yelled, "Ashley!" and the young brunette leapt to her feet and ran over to him. Feeling ignored, Larson was losing his patience. "Mr. Buckingham, Hold on!" Buckingham then said to Ashley, "Tell Williams down at Freeport that I need to talk to him, ASAP." "Yes, Mr. Buckingham," the young woman said deferentially, before rushing back to her laptop. Buckingham finally turned to Larson and Rice. "What do you gentlemen need?" After introducing himself and Ross, Larson said, "We're investigating the arson at your plant." Buckingham, a lanky, silver-haired man, waved his hand dismissively. "We know that, Detective. I spoke to your chief and to the mayor. Get on with it. As you see, we're very busy here." Larson held his tongue. No sense alienating them at the start. "Very well, Mr. Buckingham. You know we've arrested the person who actually set fire, but we're still trying to discover who hired him. And I have to ask you, was it one of you?" "That's insulting," Buckingham said, "and dangerously stupid on your part." Before Larson could respond, Ross spoke up. "Your insurance policy is placed with my company, and that policy has a duty to cooperate clause. Meaning your failure to cooperate with Detective Larson voids any potential payout. So cut the threats and answer his questions." Buckingham glowered at Ross. "We had nothing to do with the arson. Are you satisfied?" Larson ignored the CEO's belligerent tone. No point asking if they knew who Torch Thompson was. None of them would admit it. But maybe the method used to pay the arsonist would be an indirect way to probe. "How familiar are you with cryptocurrency payments?" "Well, I've invested in some," Carter, the COO, said, speaking for the first time. He was a short, swarthy man. His face set in what seemed like to be a perpetual scowl. "So what?" "I've looked into them," said Lydia Buckingham, "but I've never used them, and I'm quite sure that my father has never used them." She laughed. "He's hopelessly stuck in the 20th century. Frank Buckingham gave a contrite look. "My daughter's quite right. I'm not very technologically adept." He pointed to the young woman clicking away at her laptop in the corner. "I rely on Ashley, my assistant, for that kind of help." Larson sighed to himself. Banville's police force was small. What he wouldn't give to have an assistant to do all the mundane paperwork. Ross chimed in. "So who do you think hired the arsonist to set the blaze?" "It must have been the employees." Carter pressed his index finger on the table. "That plant's had a history of problems, including a similar fire 6-7 years ago. Those so-called loyal workers have shown that they don't care if there's a fire or not. They don't properly maintain the equipment. They don't follow procedures. They aren't that competent." "Wait," Larson said, "a previous fire?" "What are you talking?" "No," Carter yelled. "You're missing the point." "Which is what?" Larson demanded. Carter pointed to an organization chart on the wall. "The employees say they have grievances, and they've made it clear that they don't like the cost-cutting measures we've been instituting. Also, I'm sure you've heard rumors about our planned restructuring, during which some jobs might be relocated or lost. So they're pissed off and worried. There's your motive." "So are you laying them off?" asked Larson. "Maybe I'm naive," Frank Buckingham interrupted, shaking his head, "but I've known some of those men for years, even their fathers before them. They're upset, yes, but I can't believe they would commit arson." Lydia spoke up. "We've pushed the restructuring too far and too fast." "We have to," Carter's response taking a sharper edge. "If we don't solidify our market position, we'll end up getting bought out. Is that what you want?" "Those weren't our only two options," the VP replied. "And if you'd taken my advice and initiated—" "That was an idiotic plan." Carter waved his hands as if dismissing her. "If we followed your advice, we'd be in bankruptcy now, run by some know-nothing trustee." "Enough," Buckingham demanded. Larson felt lost, his 2 years of college 15 years ago not helping him understand what they were talking about. But before he could ask for details about the restructuring, Buckingham turned to Larson. "As you can see, Detective, we're at a critical juncture in our business, so this arson business must be solved promptly. Make this your top priority, or I'll be forced to have yet another conversation with the governor, the mayor, and your chief." Buckingham turned to Ross. "And as for you, sir, we've answered your ridiculous questions. We cooperated. Be sure to report that." He turned back to the table behind him. "Now, please see yourself out." What are you doing?
It's suspenseful.
It's suspenseful.
Drama. Oh, yeah. Drama.
All right.
No? All right.
Igniting the Union leader. The Union Hall, a squat brick building with grime-streaked windows, and a metal sign bolted to the front that read, "United Manufacturing Workers, Local 157," in flaking red paint, sat on the corner of a cracked asphalt lot on the outskirts of town. Detective Larson stepped inside, with Ross behind him. Even though he'd never been here before, the place felt familiar. Black and white photos of strikes from the 40s and 50s, old newspaper clippings curling with age, covering the building's walls, now yellowed with time and smoke. He spied a saggy bulletin board at one end littered with grievance notices, job postings, arbitration notices, and a tattered flyer for a union picnic that had been held 3 summers earlier. Hand-lettered signs read, "Fair wages for honest work," and "An injury to one is an injury to all." Larson had seen it before, at other locals throughout the Midwest that Larson's father had dragged him to over the years, while the older man chased, but never caught, the so-called American dream. That familiarity couldn't overcome the discomfort Larson was feeling. Ross obviously was pushing the idea that one or more of the execs had hired Thompson to burn the plant, so that the insurance company wouldn't have to pay out. Meanwhile, management wanted it to be the employees to justify their restructuring, a fancy word that meant closing the plant and moving all the jobs to another state or country, where they could pay less and reap big bonuses for themselves. Larson just wanted the truth. In the center of the large room, no doubt where they held meetings and social events, stood a battered wooden table. 3 men sat around the table, all wearing dirty work shirts. The men were thick and muscular from years of hard work. Larson wouldn't want to confront them on a dark night. Their conversation halted as soon as Larson and Ross came in, and now the air around them seemed heavy with unvoiced suspicion. Larson flashed his shield. "Shop steward around?" The oldest-looking man said, "What's your business with him?" "Just that," Larson said. "My business, and with him." The man grunted his disapproval and then pointed a meaty thumb toward the back. Larson and Ross headed that way. Through a corner door was a cramped office. Behind a battered sheet metal desk sat Bill "Red" Delaney, the head of United Manufacturing Workers Local 157. Delaney, a man in his 60s whose face looked like it had taken more punches than thrown, had run the local for generations. Larson had checked Delaney's record, discovering that the union leader had picked up a fistful of prior arrests for crimes against the companies he fought: trespass, assault, vandalism, all related to Delaney's union activities. In his zeal for workers' rights, salaries, and benefits, the man was antagonistic, avid, and wound tight. Precisely the type who'd hire an arsonist if it would help his employees. Flashing his badge, Larson introduced himself. "We need to talk to you about the fire at Buckingham plant." Delaney's eyes narrowed and his expression turned suspicious. "Who's your sidekick?" He laughed without much humor. "Dr. Watson? Barney Fife? He's too old to be Robin, the Wonder Boy, or the Boy Wonder." "He's with me," Larson said, "and that's all you have to know." Larson answered, determined not to let Delaney control the conversation. "The plant fire. The place went up fast. Too fast." "Plant is ancient," Delaney said, shrugging. "Rusted out machinery, delayed maintenance. Maybe management should have fixed the wiring." Maybe they should have, Larson agreed. Delaney's feelings brought back similar complaints voiced by Larson's father over the years. But this isn't the first fire the plant has experienced. What about that one 7 years ago? Ancient history. Ruled accidental, Delaney replied. But a bunch of our guys were hurt, some pretty badly. The shift foreman took it hard, blamed himself. Went home one night and OD'd on pain pills. That's how I know we didn't have anything to do with this latest fire. Our guys wouldn't risk anything like that again. It's time to spill the news about the arson and see how the union boss reacted. This blaze was different, Larson said. Started in 2 places simultaneously, helped by an accelerant. This wasn't an accident. Larson was withholding for now the news that they'd arrested the arsonist. He'd play that card if and when he needed to. So, automatically it was us that set the fire? Delaney's marred face reddened, his voice getting louder, harsher. Why don't you question those cooks running the company? The floorboard creaked behind Larson. He glanced around. The 3 guys from the front room now stood behind him and Ross, probably drawn by Delaney's raised and angry voice. Ross filled the momentary silence. We did talk to the management. They accused you guys. Deputy Fife finally speaks, Delaney said. He stood, the chair behind him rolling away. And you just accept their accusation? We want to get to the bottom of this, Larson said. Delaney pulled open a desk drawer. He took out a stack of pages and waved them toward Larson and Ross. Here's the latest list of demands that we filed last fall. I handed this personally to Buckingham's assistant, and she said he'd get it. You read between the lines, it's all about safety violations. We've been warning management for years that that plant is a fire waiting to happen. Larson reached for the papers, but Ross was quicker and grabbed them first. He said, They didn't take any action on these? Ignored them, Delaney said, like they've never even saw them. Larson took the papers from Ross and, after giving them a quick glance, said, You sure you gave these to management? Maybe they're figuring out how to implement the changes you want. The union leader gave Larson a, You gotta be kidding me look, then puffed his chest and crossed his arms. You guys are in their pockets, aren't you? Acting as their shill to make sure the employees are blamed for the arson. Delaney looked at the 3 union members standing behind Larson and Ross, then nodded. We know how to deal with management narcs, don't we, boys? Larson sensed the men behind them getting agitated and ready to act. This discussion was spiraling out of control. We just want the truth, Larson said peaceably, holding his hands up in what he hoped was a everyone calm down gesture. The reality is that your guys have been screaming for a while about fair wages, safe working conditions, and how management doesn't care. Spreading his hands with sincerity, Larson added, So you can see that we've got to ask. Real interest in theory. Hands on his hips, Delaney leaned forward and glowered at Larson and Ross. Except we ain't dumb enough to torch our own goddamn jobs. Well, there's talks about layoffs, rumors about the plant closing, Larson said. If you're losing your jobs anyway, you might have torched the place just to teach management a lesson. Larson felt the situation might be diffusing. Then Ross spoke. Maybe you're working with management. That plant burns, you guys split the insurance money. No one, Delaney shouted, says that kind of shit in my union hall. He pointed to the men still standing behind Larson and Ross. Show these jerks to the door, and don't be gentle about it. Larson put his hand on the handle of his gun as he turned to the men. Just take it easy, and no one will get hurt or spend the next few weeks in jail. The men froze, clearly torn between Delaney's anger and not wanting to be arrested. Then Larson faced Delaney. We're leaving. Don't do anything stupid. And you don't come back here, Delaney said, unless you got a warrant and proof.
That seemed like an overreaction. Yeah, I don't know. If I was being questioned by police, I don't think I would sick men on them.
Hmm.
Granted, I guess I'm a pretty tame dude in comparison.
Yeah, I guess he did get pretty pissed off there pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, like immediately.
But I guess if,
Uh,
you're being accused of arson in a similar fire to where one of your guys that led to one of your guys killing themselves, then I guess you might be a little touchy on the subject.
you might be, but you also might be happy that someone's actually looking into it.
That is true.
So, I don't know. It's a crazy world out there in the land of fiction.
I thought you were going to say misfit toys.
In the land of misfit toys. No, it is August. I know what month it is.
This one will drop, I think, in September.
Oh, that's even worse. Never mind. It's September.
We're going to get closer to the land of misfit
We're
toys.
close. Yeah.
All right. Larson and Ross flare against each other. Are you fucking...
Wait.
What?
We didn't acknowledge that the first chapter was a pun and the first sentence in the first damn chapter was a pun.
I gotta go back up.
Oh my God, it killed me. Because you read it and I just didn't respond to it. And I was like, I have to bring this up.
The arsonist smolders, and then
He's going to play it cool.
I
hate you, Chuck.
I love puns.
That was
Puns
two
are
in a row.
Puns are wonderful.
That hurt. That hurt on the inside. Play it cool. Really? Really?
I don't know why you feel injured. I think puns are amazing. Good puns are just a joy. Just a joy.
No, I had to interrupt to point out I couldn't let that go under the radar. Oh my gosh.
Only
Anyway.
proves you were listening.
Yeah, see? Damn.
All right. So once again, Larson and Ross flare against each other. Are you fucking crazy? Larson demanded of Ross. The detective and the insurance investigator were sitting at one of the booths at Tiny Smokehouse, a cinder block rectangle near the rail yard beyond the county line. Busted fans turned lazily overhead, and the tantalizing smell of hickory-smoked meats permeated the place. Larson had waited until they'd ordered and gotten their food before confronting the arson investigator. You can't go around accusing Buckingham executives of arson, Larson said, talking around his brisket sandwich. And you sure as hell shouldn't accuse a union boss inside his old local with a bunch of his members behind us. You could have gotten us both killed. Ross gave Larson a look, chewing like he was running numbers in his head. Once he'd swallowed his grilled chicken and taken a drink of sweet tea, he wiped his mouth. First off, I'm not a local cop, so I don't have to play nice with business hotshots. And that Delaney? A hothead, more talk than action. He wasn't going to have his guys beat us up. He's got bigger problems trying to keep them employed. You took a hell of a chance at that union hall. And you fuck with my pension by getting me fired and demoted, and I will shoot you. Larson smiled to show Ross that he was mostly kidding, but hoping to generate a bit of doubt in the insurance man's head. With that settled, let's talk about what we got and what we learned, Larson said. What did you think of the executives? Well, I don't trust any of them, Ross replied. He shook off Larson's attempt to respond, and not just because we don't have to pay if any of them are involved. Ross took another sip of tea. Buckingham's third generation of family to run the business. Did you know that most family-run businesses fail in the third generation? Andrew Carnegie said that, called it from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. Fascinating, said Larson, putting as much sarcasm into his voice as he could. So what does that get us? Buckingham's under pressure not to screw up the business any more than it is. That's why he brought in Carter last year. Ross picked at his slaw like it might fight back. This so-called restructuring they talked about, word is they're really trying to sell the business to an Asian company. Call it a merger. At the end of the day, the Asians are going to be running things. Larson leaned forward. Now, this was news to him. But before he could ask Ross about this, Larson's phone buzzed. The office. This is Larson. It's Officer Schick, sir. I just texted you a link to our file on that earlier fire you asked about. Thanks, Connie. Is there anything else you need? Well, how are the computer guys coming on tracking that cryptocurrency payment to Thompson? They say they're working on it, Detective, but it's complicated. Well, tell them to work faster, officer. Yes, sir. Larson hung up, then scanned the file that Schick had sent him. Just like Delaney had said, fire was ruled accidental, but the shift foreman at the time, a man named Henry Turner, had blamed himself and ultimately taken his own life. Larson looked over at Ross. It seems odd to me that there was another fire at the same facility. Ross shrugged. Plant's been around a long time. Shit happens. Suppose so. So what were you saying about this deal? The Asians are taking over? What happens to Buckingham, Carter, and Lydia if the deal goes through? Based on the talk on the chat sites, and from what our financial guys tell me, and I'm just guessing here, sounds like Buckingham gets a fat golden parachute, and Carter is kept as the new CEO of the U.S. subsidiary. And Lydia Buckingham? Larson asked. Ross grimaced in thought and then rubbed his chin. My suspicion is she's out on her ass. Larson thought about that. So Lydia's got a motive to hire the arsonist, right? It would kill the deal. That would cost her job. Right, said Ross, but she's not the only one. With the plant damaged, the new owner gets to move that production to other cheaper sites, maybe even to its own domestic plants overseas. Cheaper, maybe more efficient. Losing that plant helps the deal move forward. So Buckingham and Carter also have motive. Huh, Larson said. All three. He put a droopy French fry in his mouth. What about Delaney and the union guys? Delaney's real defensive, Ross said. Hardly a surprise. I mean, being a union leader, he's sure not going to be in the management's corner. Ross shook his head. It's more than that. Makes for a hell of a sympathy play, but it also gives him motive if he thought a fire would finally get the company to cave. But if the fire hurts the company, Larson thought, doesn't that hurt their jobs? A couple of different ways that could go, Ross said. Either they think that torching the plant interferes with the Asian deal, slows it down, or maybe kills it, or, as I suggested to them, they know their jobs are gone and it's done and out of anger and out of spite. So everyone's still in play, Larson said. Ross chewed his last bite. Seems like it. What's your next step? I want to know more about that earlier fire, Larson said. Something about it seems off. I think I'll visit the shift foreman's widow. You coming? Ross shook his head. I want to talk to Delaney again, see if he realizes that those jobs aren't coming back. Larson stood. Okay, suit yourself. But remember, I won't be with you this time to protect you. Low heat. Oh, what? Were you pulling your microphone down?
No, I
Oh.
wasn't.
Oh,
But that's fine. Man, too many puns.
Sorry, I thought I saw you move your microphone out of the corner of my eye.
Nah, you're good. Just a lot of puns, man.
There are a lot of puns.
What was the last one?
The title of it?
Yeah, that was the pun.
All of these are puns.
I know,
Larson
I know.
and Ross flare up against each other.
Yeah, I didn't even get it at first until you started reading, and I was like,
Yep.
flare.
We got smolder, scalding, igniting, flaring, and this one is low heat on the widow.
Or a woman. Dearly beloved.
Larson parked his department-issued Buick at the curb and killed the engine. The house sat behind yellowing grass and a sagging maple, its leaves looking dried from lack of watering. The place was modest, a traditional two-story home with peeling white paint and a rusted chain-link fence, the gate hanging loose on one hinge. A wind chime made from old silverware clinked dully in the warm breeze. Larson stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning under his weight. The door was painted blue once, but the color had been swallowed by time, worn down to bare wood at the edges. He knocked, listening to the hollow sound echo through the house. After a long pause, the door cracked open. A woman peered out, her face pale, creased, and framed by limp strands of brown hair streaked with gray. "Mrs. Turner?" he asked. She'd aged badly, now looking like the older sister or maybe the mother of the woman whose picture had been in the file that Officer Schick had sent via his smartphone. "Never hurt to verify. I've seen you around town. You're that cop." Her voice was thin, brittle, like it might snap under its own weight. "Detective Larson," he said. "Mind if I come in?" Instead of answering, she just pushed the door open wider, then turned, walking back into the house. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of boiled cabbage, mildew, and old grief. The wallpaper, once floral, was faded and starting to peel at the seams. Despite the sunshine outside, the curtains were drawn, and a single lamp glowed in the living room, casting long shadows over a sagging couch. Next to the couch was an easy chair, its cushion dented where someone had sat too long. A television sat silent in the corner, its screen blank, a thin layer of dust settled over the screen. Mrs. Turner motioned for him to sit down. Given the choice of the couch or the chair, he selected the chair. She sank into the end of the couch. "I am sorry to bring up a sensitive subject, ma'am, but since the Buckingham plant just had another fire, I have to ask you about your husband," Larson said, treading carefully. "He worked at the Buckingham plant 20 years? She lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "Almost 22. "Did he ever tell you how that earlier fire started?" "He had his theories. Faulty equipment, bad maintenance, maybe deliberate." She took a deep drag from the cigarette, the tip turning an angry shade of orange. "But in the end, it didn't matter. Some workers were hurt. The plant shut down for repairs, so other workers got laid off, and many couldn't pay their bills." She exhaled, the tendrils of smoke curling and mixing with the overall oppression of grief. "And they all blamed Henry." Larson asked, why was so much blame put on Henry? "He was the shift foreman when the fire broke out," she said. "He always said that when you're in charge, you get none of the credit, but all of the blame, even if you didn't have the authority to change things or prevent them from happening." "It must have been tough," Larson said. "Everyone's condemnation was nothing compared to the guilt Henry put on himself," Mrs. Turner said, her tone turning bitter. "In the months that followed, Henry stumbled around like a dead man walking. Didn't say 7 words. One day I'd come home and he'd... She crumbled, falling against the cushion, sobbing with sounds like a wounded animal. Larson had no words himself, but suddenly he felt like the ghost of Henry Turner was sitting beside him. Larson stood and walked around the room, letting Mrs. Turner compose herself. There were ceramic statuettes, souvenirs from Indiana and Tennessee, even as far away as Colorado. Family photos, too. Larson picked up one photograph. It showed a grinning Henry Turner and a younger, happier version of Mrs. Turner. 2 blonde teenage girls posed with them, mugging for the camera. "You have children?" Larson asked, hoping the subject would calm or at least distract the distraught woman. "We do. Or did," Mrs. Turner said. "They each took Henry's death hard. Real hard." Mrs. Turner wiped her eyes and took a few deep breaths. "Leslie, our oldest, she lives in Indiana with her family. They visit occasionally. Sheila, the younger one, she was 19 when Henry, just up and left, disappeared. I don't know where she is or if she's even alive." The plant fire had claimed more victims than just the employees. The Turner family had been torn apart by grief, maybe permanently. 7 years later, the effects were still playing out, like ripples on a pond, never ending. Larson took one last glance at the photo and started to set it back down. Then he stopped. He looked at it more closely. Something about Sheila, the younger daughter, was familiar. He thought he'd recently seen someone who bore a resemblance to her.
Aw, man, I knew who this was in the first chapter, and I just got it confirmed. I know who did it.
Can I borrow this photograph, Mrs. Turner? I promise I'll return it. Henry Turner's widow shrugged, as if beyond caring. Larson thanked her and left. Driving back to town, Larson couldn't help thinking about the Turners. In his experience, emotions drove people to commit crimes. Fear, hatred, love, revenge, guilt, jealousy, desperation. He believed that was the case here. Was it possible? Larson's phone buzzed. It was Officer Schick. Larson pictured the attractive blonde officer, then banished those thoughts from his mind. What do you have, Connie? The tech guys just cracked the crypto payment to Thompson, she said, unable to keep the excitement out of her voice. It came from Frank Buckingham. Great work, Connie, he said. Visualizing Officer Schick's blonde hair led him to think about Sheila, the Turner's younger daughter, also blonde. And that led to this crazy notion about who had hired Torch Thompson. Get over to the Buckingham admin building next to the plant, he told Schick. The conference room top floor. Round up Frank and Lydia Buckingham and Don Carter. And you better include Frank Buckingham's assistant, Ashley. We're going to need her too. Don't let any of them leave. Got it? Yes, sir, Detective.
Weird that you would need Ashley there. Who needs an assistant when accusing a man?
Surreptitious.
Peculiar. All right.
A surreptitious meet rekindles a relationship.
Rekindles.
Driving back to the Union Hall to follow up with Red Delaney, Joey Ross kept thinking about what he'd seen and heard during the morning sessions with the company executives and Delaney. He was convinced that Frank Buckingham, Lydia Buckingham, or Don Carter was behind the fire at the plant. How to prove it, and more importantly, how to convince Larson. For a local cop, the detective wasn't a complete jerk. But despite not having Ross's experience, the man insisted on taking lead. Ross shook his head. He'd dealt like local guys like him before. They were all the same. Ross drove through Banville's main drag, a sun-faded strip of liquor stores, payday loan signs, and one sad diner that still believed in serving breakfast all day. Away from the town center, he passed rust-bid houses sacking under their own roofs, and folks on porches who stopped talking just long enough to watch him go by. Clouds had rolled in, giving the sky the color of old tin, made the town look worse. The whole place was dead, just didn't know it yet. No wonder Buckingham Manufacturing had relocated its corporate headquarters to Pittsburgh. He took a left past an old feed mill and followed the road out to the Union Hall. Delaney struck Ross as the guy who knew more than he let on, someone connected with who was doing what at the company. With luck and some legally questionable persuasion, he'd get Delaney to give him the inside dope he needed. As Ross slowed to pull into the local's parking lot, a battered Ford pickup was pulling out. Delaney. The truck turned left in front of Ross's rental car, headed the same direction that Ross was going, away from town. Interesting. Ross decided to see where the union leader was headed and what he was up to. Ross followed at a distance, keeping the pickup's taillights in sight as the truck weaved along the two-lane asphalt road, past a gravel quarry, past a Catholic cemetery with its leaning crosses and empty beer cans left on multiple headstones. 10 minutes later, Delaney turned onto the gravel access road that provided access to a state park. Ross eased onto the shoulder. Minutes later, a black Lincoln, all polish and silence, pulled in behind Delaney's pickup. Delaney exited his pickup and walked to the Lincoln. The door to the Lincoln opened, and out stepped Frank Buckingham. Ross smiled. Got him. He used his smartphone to take pictures of the two men. Two men shook hands. Not a nervous handshake, not stiff, but familiar, like two old friends meeting after a job well done. Ross watched them talk to one another, heads nodding. Delaney lit a smoke and Buckingham waved the smoke away. After a couple minutes, the conversation got more heated, with Buckingham emphatically pointing with his hands, while Delaney angrily waved his arms. Maybe a disagreement over how to split the payoff? Ross wished he could hear what they were saying, but he couldn't risk letting them know he was here. Besides, it didn't matter. Their presence here, together, was enough. They'd hired Thompson to burn the plant, Buckingham to move the deal forward, Delaney to get the under-the-table piece of the pie. Or maybe spite, as Larson had suggested. Maybe both. Again, the why didn't matter. Larson had enough to accuse them, bringing them in for questioning. If Ross had to bet, Buckingham, with his better lawyers and not accustomed to facing jail, would break before Delaney. Cutting a deal to testify, Buckingham would sell his partner down the river and take whatever slap on the wrist his attorneys could negotiate. Ross would get his company's thanks and maybe a nice bonus, but he would feel no satisfaction. He never did. After all this time, this investigation was yet another confirmation that nobody's ever clean. Ross reached for his cell phone just as it buzzed in his hand. Larson. Ross would enjoy telling the cop that he'd solved the case. Ross pushed the green icon. Larson, he said. I got him. You'll never guess. No time for that now, Larson said. The tech guys traced the crypto payment to Frank Buckingham's computer. I think I've solved the case. Are you at Delaney? Ross looked up. Delaney and Buckingham were yards away, still talking. Sort of, he said. Good, Larson said, urgency filling his voice. Grab him and meet me back at the Buckingham conference room where we questioned the management team earlier. Hurry. The call disconnected. Ross couldn't believe it. Cop wasn't just stupid, he was arrogant about it. Ross smiled. He may not get satisfaction solving the case, but he'd sure enjoy showing up Detective Larson.
Ross, buddy boy, what a sad, sad man. Bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What, do you not want his heart blessed? Even though he's a fictional character?
Know what that means?
A deliberation?
Not yet. We got a couple more words to the deliberation.
We got 2 paragraphs.
All
right, I'll shut up. We'll get there.
Larson lights the match to solve the mystery. With Officer Schick already detailed to the Buckingham Manufacturing Conference Room, Larson called back to the squad room, telling the lieutenant that he was close to solving the case. Larson persuaded his superior to give him the assistance of another officer, Harry Wells. You better be right about this, the lieutenant growled. Otherwise, it's your neck. Giving the lieutenant more assurance than he felt, Larson thanked him and got Wells on the phone. Unlike Officer Schick, Wells was a heavy-set, experienced cop who was on desk duty while recovering from a recent surgery. Harry, Larson said, I need a couple of things, and I need them like 10 minutes ago. No problem, Ron. What you need? Larson described the information he needed, which would send Wells to the personnel records and a general background check. Call me as soon as you have anything, Perry. No sweat, Ron. Larson nodded. He had little evidence, but his gut told him he was on the right track. All right, we have reached the deliberation.
The deliberation.
Yes.
Got it. We're here. And it's a total mystery, guys. I have no idea.
Well, let's read our suspects and the clues for
Yes.
those who aren't so confident in who did it already.
You know what topping goes on a hamburger? Lettuce. Let us do that.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
A manufacturing plant has been set ablaze by an arsonist,
An architect.
an architect An arsonist. We don't have an architect as a character. But who hired him? That's what reluctant partners, Detective Ron Larson, and insurance company investigator Joey Ross have to figure out, with our help, of course. Here are the suspects in the order that we've met them. Officer Connie Schick, a relatively new police officer. Frank Buckingham, Buckingham Manufacturers Chief Executive Officer. Lydia Buckingham, Frank's daughter and a vice president of Buckingham Manufacturing. Don Carter, the company's chief operating officer. Ashley, Frank Buckingham's assistant. And Bill Red Delaney, the head of the United Manufacturing Workers Local 157.
It's important to me that listeners know Ashley's name is spelled Ashlie. With a name like that, how could you not have committed a crime? I'm sorry.
Yes, that is the way her name is.
Unfortunate. I like how you already highlighted that name.
I have it in the wrong order here.
Oh.
So for the book, as I think we met Ashley before we actually met Frank, Lydia, or Don, because she showed us into the conference room.
Yeah.
So no, I was just making a note to myself to move her after Officer Connie Schick.
My first instinct was honestly Don Carter, because I think it'd be cool if this was a gangster story, and he's actually not just Donald, he's a Don.
I wasn't sure where you were.
No, I just thought it was funny.
Okay, so here are the clues. A fire set by arsonist for hire Torch Thompson took down Buckingham Manufacturing's original plant. He doesn't know who hired him, as he was contracted via a encrypted email and paid through cryptocurrency.
Torch Thompson?
Nope.
You can't get a more superhero name.
That is true.
He is meant to commit arson. Bad things.
Wasn't there a...
Flash Thompson?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's exactly
the
who I
bully
was going
from Spider-Man?
Spider-Man, yes, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
The plant has had problems with safety and maintenance. 7 years prior, a fire broke out that injured workers and put people out of work while it was rebuilt. It was ruled an accident, but the union said it was preventable.
Huh.
The union continues to fight with management to address safety issues.
And yet, you'd think management would also be on top of safety. Like, they wouldn't want lawsuits and stuff.
Right.
Silly guys.
Buckingham Manufacturing is considering selling out to a foreign investor who prefers to move operations overseas. Having the plant burnt down makes moving the production easier.
Huh, interesting.
Frank Buckingham is a technologically unsavvy family patriarch who relies on his assistant for the hard stuff. He's considering selling to an international company to retire in style. The fire increases the buyer's interest.
Crazy how the man who's really bad with technology apparently paid for this arson using cryptocurrency after saying he's got no idea how to use cryptocurrency. Do you believe him? Or do you believe him?
Don Carter is the recently hired COO who is negotiating the deal where he'll become president of the division. The fire is at odds with his overall goal.
Sucker.
Lydia Buckingham is a VP, but second to Don Carter. She doesn't want to sell the company. The fire would slow down the sale and possibly create time for her to stop it.
Would it, Lydia? Would it?
The three executives claim to have not hired Torch and blame Red Delaney. Now, Red Delaney is accused of torching the plant as a strike at management after lists of safety demands were given to Frank Buckingham's assistant Ashley and never received a response.
Wow, I wonder if they ever even got to management. That's crazy.
Don Carter had some familiarity with cryptocurrency, having invested in it to some extent.
Oh, yes, of course.
Interviewed about the original fire, Mrs. Turner confirmed that the fire was an accident, but her foreman husband was blamed for not preventing it.
Poor Henry.
Yep, he committed suicide soon after. Buckingham didn't remember Turner or that his death was connected to the fire.
Kind of an asshole.
Turner's daughter Sheila disappeared soon after her father's death, further devastating the family. In a family photo, her face is familiar to Larson.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sheila's name is spelled Shelia. Do you see a connection? Do you see a connection? Did you even see the connection the first time round? Wait, you must have it. I'm sure it's written into the story.
Frank Buckingham
Wow.
and Red Delaney were observed at a secret meeting that turned into a secret argument. So, Jack, in yet another pun, who is the spark for the slow burn?
I love how I accidentally noticed one of the giant clues being Ashley's stupidly spelled name.
That is, I will say, I'm glad you explained that because it is a visual clue that
It is.
gets
It
a little
is.
lost in a podcast.
That's true. No. Oh my god.
So, Jack, who do you think it is?
Well, fellas, it's a doozy. I tell you what. It's clearly Ashley. I'm not entirely sure of 100% of the motive. Obviously, it's probably revenge for the death, but at the same time, it seems like the fire didn't totally harm all people that I think it would have been intended to harm. That being Frank Buckingham.
Yep, Frank Buckingham.
Yeah, it didn't seem to hurt him that much. So I'm a little confused on that side of it, but it was definitely her. And her anagram of a name. Anagram, is that the right word? From
Yeah.
Ashley to Sheila. Just respelling
isn't
it.
I think so. Well, let's go into the big reveal and then we can talk more about it.
Yes, sounds good.
The mastermind, incinerated and incarcerated. Minutes after Perry Wells had called back with the information he wanted, Larson walked into the same conference room he and Ross had been in earlier that day. Officer Connie Schick stood like a sentry in the middle of the room. Larson walked over to her. "Everything under control?" he asked. Officer Schick said, "I don't know how they can concentrate, let alone get anything done." She shook her head. "I thought our squad room was noisy, but this is in a whole different category." She was right. As before, the room was a beehive of activity. Carter, as COO, was alternating between barking orders on phone calls and shouting directly to staff who ran in and out of the room. Lydia Buckingham was on a series of video conferences, the headphones tightly covering her blonde hair. Ashley, Frank Buckingham's assistant, sat in the same corner as before, seemingly calm in the hurricane's eye, typing away on her laptop. Larson told Chick to stay alert and keep her eyes on Carter and Lydia. Then he walked over to where Ashley was sitting. "Where's Frank Buckingham?" "I'm not sure," she said, continuing to type away and not looking up at Larson. "He said he had to go out to see someone." Larson clamped his lips together in frustration. He needed Frank Buckingham here. He'd play a key role in exposing who hired Torch Thompson to set the fire at the plant. And where was Ross? He was supposed to bring Delaney in. Just then, as if Larson's thoughts had been the key to rubbing Aladdin's lamp, the door opened to the conference room, and in walked Frank Buckingham and Red Delaney. They were followed by Ross. Larson went to the insurance investigator. "Where have you been?" Ross's face creased into a big smile. "Breaking the case open, if you must know. I followed Delaney to a secret meeting with Buckingham, where I suspect they were talking about how to split the insurance payout." "You heard them?" Larson asked. "No," admitted Ross. "But what else could they have been talking about?" "Let's find out." Now that all the main players were gathered, it took Larson a few minutes to get quiet in the room and have all the non-essential people leave. Once that happened, Larson turned to address all the main suspects: Frank Buckingham, Lydia Buckingham, Don Carter, and Red Delaney, along with the secondary people involved in the case: Joey Ross, Officer Connie Schick, and Buckingham's assistant, Ashley. "As you all know, Mr. Ross and I are investigating the fire that occurred 2 weeks ago at the plant over there." Larson pointed out the conference room windows to the plant. "What some of you may not know is that we caught the arsonist." Somebody gasped. "But we needed to find out who hired him." Larson gestured to Ross. Mr. Ross's main goal was that of the person be someone high enough in the company to justify his insurance company not having to pay out on the policy. At the same time, now Larson pointed to Frank Buckingham and Don Carter, management's attitude was skewed toward believing that the employees were involved. "I knew it," yelled Delaney. "We can't trust any of them." "Quiet," Larson said, drowning out Delaney. "We'll get to that." Unlike my father and Carter, I didn't think that, Lydia Buckingham said. I believe that we have to work with labor if our company will survive. True, Larson said, but you had your own reason for wanting to see that plant burn. That would slow down or maybe prevent the company's deal to get bought out by a foreign company. Wait a minute, Detective, said Carter. Whatever you may have learned about that is confidential and can't be discussed with outsiders. This is a murder investigation, Mr. Carter, Larson replied, smiling. There is no confidentiality here. So it's true, Delaney said, moving toward the COO. You are planning on selling us out, moving our jobs to another country. Larson moved to step in front of the union leader. He didn't want anyone getting injured on his watch. The paperwork involved would be atrocious. That hasn't been decided, Red, said Frank Buckingham in a soothing tone. We're simply exploring all of our options. Delaney turned his anger toward the CEO. That's not what you told me in the park. Buckingham moved his hands in a shh motion. Let's not get into that. What's this about a meeting? Larson asked. Ross stepped up. You didn't give me a chance to explain, Detective. I caught those two talking in a very private meeting at the state park out of town. Even got the pictures to prove it, he said, waggling his smartphone. They were in it together. Buckingham and Delaney both started yelling. It was hard to hear what either of them were saying, but the gist was that neither of them had hired the arsonist. Larson held up his hands. Hold it down. But Delaney wouldn't be silenced. That's a damn lie. So what were you and Mr. Buckingham talking about, oh so privately? Delaney turned as red as his nickname. He wanted to let me know that he was going to save our jobs. Any deal that crook put together, he said, pointing to Carter. Mr. Buckingham said he'd make sure that our jobs weren't lost. You two-timing hypocrite, Carter said to Buckingham. Moving jobs, cutting jobs. You know that's why the Asians were offering us such a good price. We were guaranteeing that they could move operations abroad. That's why they were willing to give you $1 million retirement bonus. And that's why they're paying you too, retorted Frank Buckingham. Not to mention that they were going to make you president of all American operations. You were selling out these employees who've worked for my family for generations. Larson told them all to be quiet, then turned to Lydia Buckingham. You didn't want the deal to go through, did you? Lydia flashed a guilty look at her father and then shook her head. Thought it was a bad deal for our company and our family legacy. And I certainly didn't want him, indicating Carter, to be promoted after my father's retirement. I knew that he planned to fire me on day one. So, burning the plant was good for you? Larson asked. Well, I wouldn't put it exactly that way, Lydia said. I think you just did, Larson said, nodding his head. But we finally cracked the payment to the man who actually set the fire. It was carefully hidden, made in cryptocurrency. And it came from your computer, Mr. Buckingham. Can you explain that? The CEO turned pale. It couldn't have been me. I wouldn't know how to do something like that. Larson nodded. I agree. I watched you earlier. Mr. Carter's on his computer and so is your daughter, but you are definitely what the kids call old school. Buckingham smiled sheepishly. I suppose I am, but I don't understand. How did that payment get made on my computer? Excellent question, sir. Larson turned to Buckingham's assistant, Ashley. Would you care to explain it to him? To all of them? The diminutive brunette opened her eyes wide. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do, Ashley. Or should I call you Sheila? Ashley said nothing and her expression didn't change. Larson said to the executives and to Delaney, all four of you are fighting about power, position, money. There's more going on here than that. What else is there? Asked Carter. Revenge, Larson said. Making all of you pay in some way for the earlier fire at this plant 7 years ago. I don't understand, Frank Buckingham said. It was an accident, and while there were injuries, no one died. Larson shook his head. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Buckingham. Henry Turner, who was the shift foreman when the fire broke out. Remember him? Buckingham nodded, vaguely. Well, he blamed himself. He committed suicide some months after the fire. Shortly after that, his younger daughter, Sheila, left town, just disappeared. Larson confronted Ashley. I'm guessing that you changed your name, created a fake work history, applied to the company at its corporate headquarters, and worked your way up to become Mr. Buckingham's assistant. Positioned yourself to get revenge? Ashley said to Frank Buckingham, Sir, please, I don't know. You can quit the innocent girl act, Sheila, Larson said. He pulled out the photograph he'd borrowed from Mrs. Turner earlier and showed it to her. The resemblance is quite remarkable once you change the blonde hair to brunette. And making your new name Ashley an anagram of Sheila? I suppose that was to keep some semblance of your old life? Or maybe just to show them, he pointed to the executives, how dumb they really are? Instantly, Ashley's expression changed from innocence to anger. They deserved it. They were all so busy making more money by screwing the employees. No one cared or even remembered my father. He gave his life to this company, for this company. After Sheila Turner had been taken into custody, Larson sighed. It had been a long day. The Buckinghams, Don Carter, and Red Delaney had resumed their arguments, their voices filling the room. Ross came over to Larson and looked over the group. Guess they'll never learn. I suspect not, Larson said. Sorry it turned out this way. I guess your company will have to pay off now. Ross grinned. I'm sure we'll come up with some reason not to. Stuck out his hand. Nice working with you. Larson hesitated, then shook the investigator's hand. You too. But I hope it'll be a while before we have to work together again. Ross chuckled and waved on his way out. Larson exhaled and then massaged his neck. End of his shift. Finally. He walked away from the arguing executives and the labor guy and toward Officer Connie Schick. Crazy case, huh? He asked. Schick gave him a look, somewhere between puzzled and accusatory. Did you for a moment entertain the notion that I was Sheila Turner? Why would you think that? Larson asked. That's not an answer. And someone said that Perry Wells accessed my personnel records. Larson smiled. How about I answer your question over a drink? The end.
I don't think I get that ending.
So there were only two young women in the story. So
Yeah.
It was Ashley and Connie Schick. So when he had asked the favor of the other cop, Perry Wells, he was looking into Connie's personnel records to see if she could have been Sheila Turner. Of course, the answer was she wasn't, but we didn't know that until the big reveal.
I see. Okay, cool.
So yes, when I read this story the first time, I did pick up on the anagram.
Yeah. I only picked it up there when I read Sheila, and I was like, oh, it's the stupid name. It explains it. I was like, why did he spell it so... Why did he spell it in the way I've never seen anyone spell it? I have seen it spelled Ashleigh, like Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not totally out of the realm because it does
It's
make
not.
the right
It was
sound.
just like, why? Why
Yeah.
make that choice? Well,
Yeah.
that's why.
It was a good one because all of the other characters, I guess you could have also done it by sort of they all had motive, which meant none of them had motive. And so who is that character who is sort of on the
wrong
edge
side of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the thing that gave it away to me was, and this has happened in a lot of stories where there's like this throwaway clue, but it's almost like there's a little bit of a wink wink, hint hint.
Which one was that?
It was she looked oddly familiar in this picture, and it like there was like 3 sentences about it. And if there had been one, I would have picked up on it still, I think. But there were 3 or something, and I was like, huh, I feel like I'm supposed to pay attention. which happens a lot, but no, that was funny. I think the time, I can't remember when I figured out it was Ashley. but it was like the second time she was mentioned. Um, yes, it was when they said they got the stuff to Ashley to give
Management.
to management, and I went, oh, I bet management never got it. You know, if anything has to go through someone, and for some reason it just doesn't end up in the right place, and that through person is just a throwaway character, it's the through person.
I think the anagram did it a bit for me, but the bigger clue was the cryptocurrency Frank's computer. And
Yeah.
I knew that there was no chance, unless there was like some real, haha, I'm actually a computer whiz. But if he really was a 60-year-old kind of OG executive,
There
like,
were a lot of clues, actually.
yeah,
Between the anagram, between the photograph, between it going through Ashley, between Frank, there were quite a lot of clues.
I really struggled writing the deliberation because I did think the anagram of the name was a solid clue, but you just can't hear that.
You can't say it out loud without everyone going, oh, so it's her.
Right.
You
So
know?
I just sort of let that in the anthology.
It's not
it'll
as
be
passive.
very visual and you don't need it there.
It's a good passive clue that does not work in the spoken language. But when I've already figured it out and I'm just having fun, then
you look over my shoulder and you're like, that's a really weird way to spell Ashley.
I think the funny parts is normally when we do these, and I will just say something about, well, that's ridiculous, and then later we found out that that's a clue, and I'm like, you just heard me say the most obvious thing. You just listened to me figure it out and miss it completely, and you can't say anything about it.
Well, that's why when you made a couple of comments, I was like, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. No, that's
you said, did you get the anagram? I'm like, no comment.
You moved past it. Very well done. You can be a politician. No comment. We're moving on. That was a good one. That was a good story, though.
So let's talk about arson a little bit more.
Yes, let us.
2 episodes ago in episode 16, Larry M. Keaton wrote, "First reports are rarely right." And that was a very different kind of arson story than we had today. But in that episode, we talked about the case of serial arsonist Thomas Sweat. So today I thought we'd go a little bit more into the technical side. So I found an article published back in June of 1982, in the Fire and Arson Investigator, Volume 32, Issue 4. The link is in the show notes. That had a classification of arson motives based on a sampling of 139 cases in New York City. And so the following comes directly from the article's abstract, although I've rearranged it a bit to be easier to follow. So, the types of arson motives identified are pyromania. So the pyro fire setter usually sets the fire in an occupied, multiple dwelling at night in a public portion of the building, usually on the floor and using a flammable liquid for fire rather than using multiple fires. So out of those 139 cases, 10% of them were pyromania. Number 2, which was this one, was revenge. The revenge fire setter, who often threatens arson prior to the act, which Sheila did not, focuses on the residents or buildings associated with the targeted victim, so that falls in line, and uses flammable liquid to start one or multiple fires. So that totally falls in line. And of the 139 cases, over 50% were revenge. Vandalism was 12% of the cases, and the vandal arsonist targets occupied multiple dwellings as well as commercial buildings, schools, jails, churches, and abandoned buildings. Night is the favorite time, and the first floor is preferred for starting the fire. Insurance fraud, which is 6%, and that was actually the case I said in episode 16. Arson for insurance is obviously committed on insured property. Be useless to do it on uninsured property. And the fire is designed to provide complete devastation. Then we have welfare fraud. Welfare fraud fires are usually set in the residence of the perpetrator after all valuable property has been removed. That seems like a really major tell. I just moved all of my stuff out of the house and then it burnt down. The crime concealment arsonist is usually concealing a burglary, and existing paper at one spot on the floor is generally used. All right, then we have the psycho fire setter. The psycho arsonist usually sets the fire in his own residence and customarily starts one small fire without the use of an accelerant. So that sounds like somebody who just likes playing with fire. Then the last one is the crime concealment, and these are fires set to destroy evidence of other crimes such as theft or murder.
Probably the most popular use of arson in mysteries.
Maybe in mysteries, but not in real life.
Not in real life, but in mysteries. I mean, that was in what was the one that just came out not too long ago? It wasn't Glass Onion. It was Knives Out.
Knives Out.
Yeah, Daniel Craig. Knives Out. It was using that one. That's a very popular option.
So I just want to make note that there's several caveats to some of the data that I just sent you. So first of all, this article is 43 years old. So it's older than Jack, but younger than me. And it was based on a very narrow data set, 130 cases specifically in New York City. That might contribute to why so many things were talked about multiple dwellings as opposed to some other areas. I like the article still for the simplicity and the way the results were presented. So while I'm sure there's more recent reports out there, I didn't find one that was nearly as neat. So take the data in large terms. I thought the definitions of the different type of arson motives was really pretty cool. The link to the article is in the show notes. And now it is our pleasure to introduce you or reintroduce you to our friend Chuck. A mostly retired and hopefully recovering attorney, Chuck Brownman now enjoys writing noir fiction, concentrating on short fiction. His work, as you heard in the pre-roll, has been published in several anthologies and on multiple websites, included those that we just talked about. He has also served various times as a judge for the Mystery Writers of America Edgar Awards. And when not writing fiction, Chuck continues to advise some of the country's most entrepreneurial energy and natural resource companies. He is also an adjunct law professor and has spoken at legal seminars for years. He lives with his wife in the mountains of Colorado, the peaceful vistas offering a counterbalance to his suspenseful and often bloody crime fiction. So that wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Show your support by subscribing, telling a mystery lover about us, giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, m2d4podcast.com, for links to this season's authors. The anthology for the second half of the season releases in October, so add it to your Christmas, Hanukkah, or your to-be-read list. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. A Slow Burn was written by Chuck Brownman. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, which as you all know is the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story where home burglary is our murderless crime. It's Karen and the Cul-de-sac Caper by Kira Jacobs. All right, Jack, take us out.